welcome to PA Voter Information Network. This is Larry DeMarco, your host.
Mike, we had a brief discussion about the organization of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. The Democratic Party is more municipal based. Can you contrast, they're close, but can you contrast how Republican leadership is organized here in Delaware County, of course?
Certainly. Well, you have the Delaware County Republican Party and its bylaws, and then you have each of the local municipalities has their own party. Their bylaws are not necessarily the same as the county party. If they don't have bylaws, then the county party's bylaws would prevail as a ruling structure, as a governing structure for the parties. But in, for example, in Springfield, where I am the elected GOP chair, there are, underneath that, there are the committee, the executive committee. There's a committee man and a committee woman from each of the precincts in each of the wards, and then there are ward leaders. In the Delaware County Republican Party, the executive committee is made up of each of the elected committee men and committee women all throughout Delaware County. And then there is what are known as the district representatives. And that is divided into the the county is divided into the legislative districts, and then the committee people from those legislative districts elect a representative to be their voice at the county level in the party structure. And then there is a secretary and a vice chair, and then the chair. And currently our chair is Tom McGarrigle. Our vice chair is Carol Miller.
How many districts are there, and do they match up identically with all of them? Like, for instance, Representative Donatucci and Representative Waters have such a small pocket. Is there a district for those?
They would be assigned to the next largest district. So I believe that those very small areas in eastern Delaware County or southeastern Delaware County, those committee folks for a Donatucci or a former Representative Waters would go into the district that Representative Davidson has, or Representative McClintock has.
Sure.
So if it's only very small, there's not a representative for a very small district. It's mainly Delaware County districts.
So how many are there then?
Know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. That one I don't know.
Right.
I can tell you who shows.
8?
I can tell you who shows at the meetings. There are about 8 people.
8. Okay. Well, I think that might be all of them, but there's a perception of pay to play in Delaware County with the government, particularly, which has long time been controlled by the Republicans, and even some candidates, the Madden and Zidek ticket, ran on a platform of anti-corruption, and there's stories such as signs being taken, or that you have to, if you move into Delaware County, you're told you only could register to be Republican if you want to have any access to government, if you wanted a job in the courthouse, things of that flavor and nature. I think we've all heard those stories.
Mm-hmm.
What is your take on that criticism of county government?
Well, that's a large question with lots of topics, and I'd like to work backwards from them. And if I don't hit them, make sure you let me know, because I do believe I have a response for the majority of the issues that you raised, and I believe it's evidence-based, and I would ask people to think about it and submit it for into their thought process. If you move to Delaware County, you have to register Republican. One of the first myths. I've been involved in politics since I got out of law school in 1991. It's a passion. It's an interest. I enjoy it. I enjoy the give and take. I believe politics is people who have different opinions and different takes on things, figuring out how they can get from point A to point B without compromising their core moral principles. That's what politics should be viewed as in a positive fashion. How, if you and I disagree, but we realize we have to go from A to B, and we need to get there. How do we get there without betraying our core principles? That's what politics is. And it's work. It's not easy. It's not off the cuff remarks. It's really figuring out a problem. That's what I believe politics at its core really is. And I've been involved in politics. I was a commissioner for 10 years in Springfield. I was a county council person for 4 years, for one term. I opted not to run for re-election. And I'm a party leader. And I know that the committee man in the structure, Republican or Democrat, in the structure, the committee man is supposed to be able to tell his or her township leader or commissioner or council person that, hey, here's what I'm hearing. Here's what the pulse of the neighborhood is. Here's what they're saying. This school bus isn't stopping at that stop sign, and you need to do that. All very similar. So I take it to heart on things like that. Just perceptions that are there. Example, new moving on my street. I didn't know who they were. I don't know what they're registered. I don't have a list. I know I've lived on the same street for 50 years. I'm not a real good mover, but I've lived on the same street for 50 years. So I know the house up the street, the old, Edwards home, is now occupied by somebody else. I've known it for 2 weeks, and if I see a door open, I say to myself, I'm going to stop. I stop, I introduce myself, welcome them to the neighborhood. I let them know I'm the committee man for that neighborhood. I used to be the commissioner. I'm the Republican chair of the town. They moved to my town for a reason. Those folks weren't relocated there. They chose my town for a reason. They chose it, in my opinion, because of the good school district, the low taxes, the great municipal services, all things that, as a Republican leader, I'm proud of. I didn't ask what their registration was. I want them to know by hard work and acknowledgement that the reasons they move there and live there are reasons by how you govern. Good government is good politics on a local level. End of story. And it goes up to right about the county level. Good government is good politics.
Mike, and I accept your experience, and we're both involved in our respective parties. I could also present to you stories or anecdotes of different experiences and different perceptions where people will say that they moved in and they had, these stories are true individual reports of when they were told, listen, this is a Republican town, to get anything done, to get a job or whatnot, you have to be Republican. Now, there are reports of that type of interaction. Now, you're not saying that everyone is just like you, are you?
No. I'm not saying that. But I am saying, look, in the times and the places, I was a commissioner from 1996 for about 10 years, or for about 8 or 9 years. Maybe it was 90, maybe it was 94. I can't exactly remember the time, but I was close to 10 years on the board there. I never went to someone to try and solve a problem or a request for help and said, gee, let me look at their party registration. That will not get you anywhere in politics. I know it's the perception, and I would say to you it's largely incorrect. If you are in township government or you are in county government, you are one of 5. You are absolutely going to get requests along the lines of, would you be a reference for me? Would you be of assistance to me? I have had those. I try to help whoever I can if I have the opportunity to, regardless of party registration. I have never said or saw, when I was on county council, a conversation that there's no what's your registration on the form. So the perception that goes along with a one-party rule, regardless of whether it is Republican or Democrat. In Philadelphia, for the longest period of time, one-party rule was Republicans. in the early part of the century, began to change in the 50s and 60s. It's one-party rule in Democrats. And the same thing could be said there. You can't get a job in City Hall unless you're a Democrat. I would disagree with that. That's just, and were there practices in the 50s, 60s, and 70s? Yes. And laws changed.
Now, you referenced Philadelphia. You're back to Delaware County. Were there practices in Delaware County?
I would say there were practices in both of those areas
Fair
with
enough.
regard to patronage and macing and things of those sorts.
Macing is requiring an
Macing
employee to donate back to the
that's a
party.
quid pro quo. That's corruption. All right? That's corruption. No question about it. That is, hey, you have a job, your job is X number of dollars, and therefore you should give X percent back to the local party, the person that got you that job. That, I have never seen anything close to it. It's illegal, and it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen in Philadelphia, and it doesn't happen here.
Mike, my experience through my party and the interviews and stories that I've taken is maybe more prevalent of the type of things that you may have said, denied jobs or whatnot, but you can say that you have never, ever conducted yourself that way as a leader, and you don't know of anyone else from your experience who's done that as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, but I think, look, we hear lots and lots of things that are anecdotal in nature that may have happened to a parent or a sister, and as it gets a little bit extenuated along the lines.
I want to be specific. We've heard it from committee people too. We hear it from people who are high level within the Democratic Party or volunteers.
All I can tell you is I've never seen that when I was there on council with the interactions. It's illegal. And I think the allegations that it is a widespread or pervasive practice are actually allegations that take away the dignity of the folks that work there. Look, the county is, I think Delaware County is one of the largest employers in the county, with, I think, the largest workforce. They are tremendously diverse in the folks with what they do in the different fields that they do. And when someone gets up on a weekly basis or on a bi-weekly basis and says the anecdote and makes a generalization, you can't get a job here unless you're Republican, unless you have a friend, unless you're somebody's crony, says to all of those people that did get the job in the legitimate way, which is 99.9% of those people, that degrades them as if they are not worthy of the job. They're not good at what they do. They don't work hard. That's unfortunate. It is a generalization that I think is inappropriate for county employees, and it paints everybody with the same brush. It's a political theme. I get it. I understand it. I'm not going to tell you. I understand it. It is a platform that you run on.
So then let's talk about Philadelphia and Delaware County together, because it's more Delaware County's past, and we're starting to see more of a balance in Delaware County, politically at least from the last cycle that we had, but still exists in Philadelphia. Would it be fair to say that when you have any one group that has too much power, you're more susceptible to maybe an unwritten or an unspoken behavior that favors one political party?
And yes, regardless of your party. So absolutely. If you don't have a check and balance, or you don't have people, if you are not truly prepared to govern and have those checks in place, certainly, decades of being unchecked can result in poor practices.
So it brings me to my next point. The Madden and Zydick campaign platform 2 years ago included a measure of ethics reform for county government. And there's a national group called Represent Us that's putting forth something called a National or American Anti-Corruption Act. Do you agree or disagree that something like that would benefit government, not only here, but Philadelphia and across the country?
While I'm not familiar with the organizations you mentioned or their platforms, yes, I agree with you. Look, we as Delaware Countyans can always do better in our government. The Home Rule Charter was a charter that was written in 1975, and many things have changed since 1975. It's a document that allows itself to be amended or altered. It just has to be, you have to establish a Home Rule Charter Commission, and then you have to, whatever changes are proposed have to be placed on the ballot, and we, as basically a ballot question, we have to vote upon them. So certainly, I think their times have changed since 1975, and a review of ethics and possible ability to change some ethical requirements would benefit both parties. I think it would benefit Delaware Countyans as a whole, but the proposals have to be vetted and brought forward in a nonpartisan way, which is tough to do in today's hyperbolic environment.
Fair enough. Now let me just be specific in what we're talking about for our viewers. Mm-hmm. We're talking about eliminating dark money. We're talking about tightening conflicts of interest. We're talking about legislating away any type of pay to play. I don't mean that literally. I don't mean the negative connotation. I mean not being able to vote on something involving a donor if you received a certain amount of income. You would agree that we would need some type of law addressing those matters.
We would need to change the Home Rule Charter, but we would have to be very careful not to restrict First Amendment rights. This is one of those issues that I see in my school district practice at times. First Amendment, how a student expresses him or herself, and what they want to say and how they want to say it, oftentimes does not necessarily jibe with what the current culture may be, or authoritarian culture for a school district. But in this situation, there are court cases. We're both attorneys. There are court cases, and I'm not talking about Citizens United or anything like that. I'm talking about prior to that type of ruling. There are court cases that political donations are an expression of free speech. So whatever we would do with regard to that, we would have to be mindful of, not violating that law. You mentioned limits and things of that sort. That would probably be, a good way to start. So that if someone gave to a Republican, just because they gave to a Republican in their town, doesn't mean they would be prohibited from bidding on X, Y, or Z at the county. But if they gave a certain amount of money at the county, yeah, they would be prohibited from doing that. But it's got to be fair, and we have to make sure we don't bump up against those First Amendment issues.
All right, again, but for a one-word answer, a yes or no, we do need something. Is that fair to say?
Yes, I'd be in favor of that.
Okay.
And I believe the Republican County Council candidates are in favor of that.
All right. Well, I am unaware of either ticket pledging to move forward in that direction. Would you recommend that a candidate who is running for county office in any county pledge for such an ethics reform?
Well, I think the openness and the transparency of it would benefit all of Delaware County. So I don't think it's a partisan issue. If I were the candidate, I would say that. I would say yes today. And I don't speak for the Republican candidates, but I think it would be a fair question to ask, and I would be surprised if they weren't supportive.
I want to jump back into politics and the difference between the two parties here in Delaware County. The congressional candidates the last cycle, 2018, the Democrats had a long involved process that went right up to primary day, where it started with 16 candidates and very gradually whittled down. In contrast, the Republicans had 5 candidates, and they came to a consensus right very shortly after their convention. I interviewed John McLaren, the author of Ruling Suburbia. He contrasted the two as discipline versus democracy, as the Republicans to the Democrats. What do you think the policy is behind that difference?
Well, I would respectfully disagree that one is discipline and one is democracy. They're both democracy. It is, and I would submit to you it's also perspective and how you look at it. Right? I believe that at least the party I'm involved with, the Republican Party, that if you read the bylaws, the party endorses. That's what the party does. If you're not going to endorse, then what do your committee people do? The basis of, at the base level, your committee people in your ward are supposed to endorse your commissioner candidates, which means they're the ones closest to the people, so they know whether Joe Jones is a good community guy. Does he coach football? What's he like? Does he coach his daughter's softball game? You endorse. For years, that was viewed as undemocratic, but there's an endorsement vote. It's an internal vote. That doesn't mean that no one else can run for the position. That's what primaries are all about, but it's an endorsement. For years, Democrats didn't endorse. You endorse this year. Why? Because primaries are ugly and messy, and they leave deep divisions, no matter how you look at it. And Democrats believe that this year is their year, that they're going to win and they're going to sweep. And what did you do? You endorsed. You made deals. There were promises exchanged, not illegal. You endorsed pursuant to your bylaws. Why? Because you didn't want to have a primary like you had for that congressional race.
So, Mike, let me follow up. There's still a slight difference in the process that I want to go back to discipline versus democracy, or at least let's talk about discipline. The Republicans, for the judicial and county council candidates, had a more quieter discipline process, whereas the Democratic process had, I was involved in this so I can speak to this, numerous public video recorded forums where 1,000 committee people voted to endorse the candidates who were ultimately chosen and endorsed officially by the party. Whereas the Republicans, my understanding is the endorsement vote was by the district leaders. Is that right?
No. The county council members were endorsed by the full committee at an endorsement meeting. They were nominated and brought forward. This year, again, I think it's a great question and a great way to look at things.
Can I follow up on that question so we don't have to come back to it? Was it contested?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it was. This year is flipped. In years past, it was Republicans who wanted to run for county council and or judge, and it was a deep bench and the line was long. This year it was the exact opposite. There were a lot more Democrats than there were Republicans who wanted to run for county council. And we did it last year, and we did it this year, and it is something.
Did what specifically?
We spoke at committee peoples, and the announcement from the party was, if you are interested in running for county council, please submit your name.
In fact, there was a letter that was in the paper that Tom McGarrigle put out in the Delco Times asking if anyone was interested. Now, is this the first time in modern history that you recall anything like that happening?
It is. It is, and I think it yielded a fantastic slate for us. I think it yielded a slate. There is no incumbent running. There is no basically really minor league, like these are the commissioners from this town. These are folks that, with the exception of Jim Wraith, who is an elected official and has been in a small town in western Delaware County, Thornbury, these are not career politicians who have been involved. And it's a new look, it's a fresh perspective, and it came from the Republican committee raising their hand and say, hey, we want a different process. We want to open this up and to have more involvement in the selection of our candidates and people who want to run. And I think it was a great process for us. We still endorsed. That's what you do. If you're going to be an elected committee person, at the end of the day, you're going to have to choose between candidate A or candidate B. You don't get to say, I like vanilla chocolate and strawberry. You have to pick one. That's what the committee does and the party endorses. But the process took place. Candidates met, they went from town to town, they spoke, and then they came back to a central location, and we had a meeting with all the folks there, and folks were nominated. And, you know.
You said county council. Were the judges voted on as well by the entire committee or just the leaders?
No, judges were the entire committee as well.
Oh, so both were by the committee?
Yes. Yes, that's what the bylaws require.
Okay. Mike, any closing words to our listeners, Republican or Democrat?
Certainly. The one thing I would like to set forth is there is such a rough discourse and lack of civility in our national politics these days that it doesn't have to be that way in Delaware County. We can talk about issues. We can talk about our differences. We can talk about them bluntly and directly. But we don't need to lower ourselves to the level of hatred and animosity that social media has, in addition to other things, allowed to take place. I would like to thank all of the candidates, regardless of what party they are, for placing their name on the ballot in a very difficult political environment. It takes courage to do that. I've been on the ballot numerous times, so I know what you feel when you are afraid that an attack or a candidacy is going to impact your family or your job, and there are certain things that just aren't fair with running for office today. You've all put your name on a ballot to decide to make the community that we live in better. You possess those beliefs, and I thank you for that. And I just believe that there's no need for that. I look forward to an opportunity in Springfield and throughout Delaware County to continue this exchange. I appreciate you, Larry, in having me on here. You know, we can disagree on topics and issues, but the way that we do that, and if we focus on the fact that we're Delaware Countyans and that we are proud of the area we live in. I have a pride. If I'm not proud of my township, Springfield, and the county that I live in, I wouldn't live here.
And Mike, I want to acknowledge you for coming on my show. You're a high-level official within the Republican Party, and I'm a 3-time candidate of the Democratic Party who started a YouTube channel and has primarily had democratically registered guests. So I want to make an invitation to anyone of either party, and particularly the Republican Party, who has been less responsive, to come on my channel. We have a lot to say. We're a lot of elected officials, employees of the courthouse who do jobs that we don't know, and we'd love to hear about it. So please accept my invitation. Anyone who is a candidate or has an important task that they want to share with the rest of the county, please feel free to be a guest on my show. There is no charge. And in inviting everyone, I want to ask you, Mike, did you feel comfortable?
Oh, absolutely. I'll speak with my colleagues, and I'm sure that, I can't say I'm sure. I'll speak with my colleagues, and I'll encourage them to attend. I appreciate the opportunity for the dialogue, the opportunity to dispel some myths, and the opportunity to try and be a leader in civil discourse as we try to move forward in just an increasingly uncivil age.
Thank you for your sacrifice and your work with municipal and county government, for your contribution to democracy, and being a guest on PA Voter Information Network.
Much appreciated, Larry. Pleasure.
We are here with Mike Puppio, and I am your host, Larry DeMarco. If you like this video, please share it with all the people on your contact list and Facebook friends. Signing off. Tune in next time. Bye for now.